Welcome to a professional learning video on using puppets as a pedagogical tool in language learning. The aim of this video is to consider effective approaches to increase the motivation and engagement of learners in languages through the use of puppets. The 2017 Education Scotland update to 1+2 guidance made clear that giving learners purposeful, real-life context to use their newly acquired language skills is critical in engaging and motivating them. As we shall see, puppets are an excellent way to provide those real-life contexts for using another language. A 2019 literature review found that while there is extensive evidence around the benefits of using puppets in the classroom, their use is not as extensive as it could and perhaps should be. The review identified these 5 key benefits of using puppets, several of which are highly relevant to language learning. In order for language learning to be meaningful, it must involve communication. Learners are also far more likely to take the risk of experimenting with a new language if they are in a positive classroom climate, where they feel integrated within the group and so are able to cooperate to develop their language skills. In contexts where there may be negative attitudes to language learning, a puppet can help to address this. Puppets have been shown to increase children's concentration and imagination, add drama and enjoyment, encourage more spontaneous use of language, offer opportunities for creative pair or group work, and to create opportunities for repetition without being boring. For both practitioners and learners who are less confident in using languages, the puppet provides something to hide behind. It is not the practitioner or learner who makes mistakes, but the puppet's character. The puppet becomes the focus rather than the person. Also, learners have been shown to view the puppet as a peer rather than a practitioner, which makes them a less threatening conversation partner, because the puppet is not someone who will be assessing them. This often encourages less confident learners to speak when they would be less willing to do so to the practitioner or class directly. If the puppet only speaks the target language, it provides a real, meaningful reason for the learners to use that language. This is especially relevant for additional support needs learners who perhaps can't understand why the teacher, who they know can understand English, suddenly wants them to communicate in another language. A constant revisiting character also provides continuity and a visual reminder that the learning is in and about the target language. While there are several commercially produced puppets, some with teaching packs alongside them, any puppet can be used in class. How you intend to use your puppet may affect your choice. A great way to use puppets is for them to be a visitor from a country that speaks the target language. Remember to consider a puppet from a country which speaks the target language but is not the obvious choice. For example, a French-speaking puppet from Burkina Faso or a Spanish-speaking puppet from South America, which allows for greater diversity in your choice of puppet. This option gives many opportunities for the puppet to share their knowledge of their home country, its culture and traditions. They can teach the children traditional games and songs and share their customs. In return, the children can be encouraged to share their own. This can be especially rich in schools where the children represent multiple nationalities, languages and cultural traditions. When naming your visitor, or perhaps you will call them a language assistant, choose a name that is typical of speakers of that language. Many practitioners choose an animal or monster and gender-neutral name to avoid issues of gender and race representation. Your new assistant will need a home to live in, such as an enclosed bag, small suitcase, drawer, or similar, so that they always appear alive to the learners, who should never see their new friend dead in a cupboard or box somewhere. The puppet can be of any size and complexity of operation you are comfortable with. The minimum requirement is that it has a mouth that can be moved. It could be as simple as a sock puppet or as complex as a multi-stringed marionette-style puppet, if your skills allow. Many practitioners choose a glove or hand puppet. Another option, instead of one puppet, is to have many puppets. Finger puppets work well for this, for the children to use in both teacher-directed activities and their child-led learning and play. If budget is an issue, making the puppet is a wonderful ideal opportunity and can be adapted for any stage. Even more accessible is using a whiteboard pen to draw 2 dots for eyes and a mouth on a finger, which works just as well. An alternative option is to choose a puppet from the cultural traditions of the target language, for example, a Chinese dragon, an African figure, or a harlequin from France. In this way, the puppet itself is also a cultural artifact, and comparisons can be drawn with traditional puppets in UK culture, such as Punch and Judy. There are many ways to use puppets in class. If your puppet is a recurring visitor, it is good to build a routine of a phrase or song to wake them, perhaps with one or two children coming to open their home. They then join the lesson, bringing props which prompt the learning, for example, a map, toys, or a photograph. Then, at the end, there is another goodbye routine or song, by the end of which the character is back in their home. In the first session they attend, the puppet will introduce themselves to the class by asking and answering questions to learn about each other. At early level, this can be as simple as "What is your name?" At following sessions, previously used questions can be reduced and new questions and answers introduced. As we move into first and second level, the practitioner can increase the number of questions introduced each time to match with the prior knowledge and pace of learning preferred by their learners. The advantage of this approach is that children and young people are not learning lists of vocabulary words, but are quickly moving through the listening and talking progression from words to phrases, sentences, and questions and answers. When the new vocabulary to be learnt is not personal information, the puppet can still assist by leading the introduction of games, action songs, or activities to reinforce the vocabulary. For example, to start learning about colours, the puppet could bring their country's flag and name the colours in it. The children could then bring objects of other colours and ask, "How do I say this colour?" If a practitioner is not confident in their language knowledge, the puppet may also bring a video or audio files to support learning the new vocabulary. The puppet can also be used as a prompt for reading or writing activities. In this example, which is for learners towards the end of second level, following learning in literacy about letter writing, the puppet has sent a postcard from their holiday, which the learners are being asked to reply to. Alternatively, they could bring a tourist information leaflet from the character's hometown with a request for the class to make one about the school's local area. A menu, book, or comic may also work depending on the context. The choice of what to bring should be informed by learning in other curricular areas, allowing for an IDL approach to be undertaken. If you have access to more than one puppet, then the learners will also enjoy operating and speaking for the puppets. These can be used in role plays, to record short films or audio clips, or in any other activity or game which requires spoken language in the classroom. Finger puppets, animal toys, or dolls can also be used. If you don't have anything at all, then as mentioned before, a face drawn on the finger is also very effective. Animating a puppet while leading a class and remembering vocabulary in another language may seem rather overwhelming, especially for those who are not yet confident in their own language skills. In this situation, a shy puppet is a blessing. The practitioner can bring the puppet's mouth to their ear, move its mouth while they mime listening, and then translate for the learners. The following are some hints to help make it seem more real as you use your puppet. First, ensure the puppet makes eye contact with whoever it is talking to, whether that's a class or an individual. When the puppet is new, remember he or she will need to look for whoever is speaking, even if you are looking directly at them and have said their name. It can do this by turning its head. The puppet should always move its mouth when talking. This doesn't have to be perfectly correct movements for every single syllable. Just make sure the mouth opens at the start of a sentence and closes at the end every time the puppet speaks. If you can, try to match the open mouth to the vowel sound in each syllable for the first few words, which will help make it appear more convincing. If there's a problem with pronunciation of a particular word in your class, then repeating the word slowly with the puppet opening their mouth on each syllable will help. Moving the puppet in other ways when talking should be avoided. Save big movements for dramatic effect when you really need it. You do not need to be a ventriloquist, and you shouldn't try. Children will be watching the puppet, and even the most hardened P7 deep down wants that puppet to be alive. They are more likely to notice and, more significantly, comment if you are trying to hide that you are speaking than if you speak normally. If needed, the puppet can lose its voice, become shy or tired, and perhaps need a rest, or want to see the pictures or book or board when you need to focus on other props. We can use movement to help the puppet show emotion without using words. A worried puppet will take quick glances back and forward, perhaps hiding its face against you, looking slowly out and then quickly tucking it back. To show surprise, a double take, so begin to look away and then go back. To ignore someone, the puppet will avoid eye contact and look away at the ceiling or wall. If the puppet is angry or rejected, perhaps because someone spoke to them in English and they just don't understand, a stiff head and eyes fixed away tells us this. If the puppet is feeling hurt or embarrassed, slow glances back and forth between the learner and you will show this. To show sadness, drop the head and look towards the floor. To show being stubborn, lift the head and the chin. To show confusion, tilt the head from one side to the other. As a general rule, keeping the mouth slightly open usually conveys a smile, and tightly closed suggests a frown or disappointment. You might want to check some of these with your puppet using a mirror. In this way, the puppet can express the feelings it has and, perhaps, does not always agree with the choices that the practitioner is making. While this video has been focused on the use of puppets in languages learning and teaching, they can also be used across the curriculum in a variety of ways to increase motivation and engagement. Puppets are particularly useful in discussing challenging interpersonal or personal issues with a class. If the puppet has the problem, the class can discuss and suggest how to solve the problem without any child being identified as having the same issue. If you have a puppet who is a language assistant for languages, do make sure they only speak their language though. They can't be an English speaking character in one lesson and then return to being the language assistant in the next. Further ideas to use puppets across the curriculum can be found in the first of these documents, Teaching and Learning with Puppets by V. Pendry. As this was written for an Ethiopian context, the initial contextualization of puppets in local culture is not relevant to us here in Scotland. However, the ideas and suggestions in later sections of the article are excellent and for all curricular areas. Further professional reading, which you may be interested in, has also been highlighted here. Thank you for engaging with this Pedagogy Premiere.